It's Friday, November 10th, 2023, and the New York Islanders have once again decided to dash all hopes of having a stellar season, and they must once again figure out how to play hockey, specifically in the third period. So let's talk about it. I am Nick Palmer, one of your WFUV Sports New York Islanders beat reporters for the 2023-2024 NHL season. And I thought now would be a good time to have a little check-in on our blue and orange, seeing as they're about 15% of the way into the season. And I think the best way to discuss them is to review some recent games. We can go line by line, and then we can delve into some of the larger themes. And hopefully, by the end of this, we can uncover why the Islanders are where they are and figure out where they need to go. Before we talk about the loss to the Hurricanes, and the loss to the Wild, and the loss to the Bruins, I want to toss a few stats at you so we can orient ourselves with some key issues that this team faces. The New York Islanders have the fourth worst goals scored per game in the NHL. They are outscored 10-3 in third period goals this season, and they now sit at a record of 5-4-3. That is 13 points total, which is good to make them fourth in the Metropolitan Division. So, what can be concluded from this is that the Islanders cannot play a full 60 minutes of hockey. That problem, combined with recent penalty issues and some key players struggling to find their groove, have led the Islanders to this precarious spot early in the season. And the answers to these questions just aren't clear. So let's take a look at the last three games for the Islanders. Let's talk about the Hurricanes game. The Islanders take a 3-goal lead into the third period at home and blow it to lose in overtime to the speedy Carolina Hurricanes. Luckily, I wasn't there. So, when the Islanders are outshot 48-25 in a game, you've got a good shot of losing. The fact that Sorokin was in net was probably the only reason that the Islanders ended up scratching a point out of that game. I just saw a lack of ability from the bottom two defensive pairs, specifically just to get the puck out of the zone. I will touch on them later. Hint, hint, they are a big issue for this team. Bottom line, 4-3, Islanders lose, but they get a point. Now, let's talk about this Wild game where I, unfortunately, was in attendance. Once again, the Islanders play a good brand of hockey in the first two periods. Heard this story before? Yes, you have. It just tends to completely collapse in the third period. This one was thanks to back-to-back penalties. This time, it would be a lack of defensive structure that would kill the Islanders, as defenseman Alex Romanov was megged on a pass to Eriksson Ek just to tap in easily. One upside was the first goal of the season for Oliver Wahlstrom, who hadn't scored a goal in 333 days thanks to an injury last year. It was nice to see him get on the scoreboard. A little dance between two Wild skaters followed by a gorgeous snipe is a real boost of confidence. You know what, Wally? I'm so hyped up about this. You deserve a video replay for that, even though you lost 4-2 to the Wild. Roll that clip.
Toy department, tremendous goal from Oliver Wahlstrom. That's the ability that this young player has.
And it's good to get the power play going.
Now let's get into their most recent game, which was a loss to the Boston Bruins at TD Garden. Now, you are playing the NHL's best team last year, and they were a record-setting team at TD Garden, where they famously only lost, I think, 1 or 2 games. Simon Holmstrom tied up this game at 2-2 on the penalty kill in the third period. That is the least Islanders sentence you've ever heard in your life, but it was remarkable. I was like, wow, this team can score shorthanded. This team can score in the third period. Maybe we have a shot of beating the best team in the league. Is that what happened? No, of course it's not. Of course it's not. I was just hoping they would get a point out of this. No, they're not going to do that. Setting aside the fact that Ilya Sorokin did not honestly look like himself and allowed a weak goal on the penalty kill, that's not even the point. The problem runs so much deeper. What truly killed the Islanders in this game was a Sam Bolduc high sticking call, which murdered the comeback potential. What kills this team is penalties, specifically the inability to control the stick. The following penalties are so avoidable and should not happen. And this is just in the last 4 games. You ready for this? Sam Bolduc high sticking late in the third period against Boston. Casey Zizekas, high-sticking in the third against Minnesota. Noah Dobson, high-sticking early in the third against Minnesota. Matt Barzal, high-sticking against Carolina, where he got fined $5,000 for high-sticking on Tony DeAngelo. That doesn't even get into the 4 hooking calls in the last 4 games. So when your team sits near the bottom of the league in scoring, is struggling on defense, and sits in the box for half the game, where do you start to stop the bleeding? It has to start with the captain, Anders Lee. In 12 games, he has 1 goal and 1 assist. He has been shuffled through the first 3 lines, and on each line, he has struggled. Yes, his stats aren't good, but that's just not the player he is anymore, and this is where I can cut him a little slack. He's 33 years old, and he has slowed down considerably. He is not going to be scoring 40 goals like he did in 2017. Where he excels is his hockey IQ, delivering strong passes, and burying tip-ins. However, when this production is so abysmal, hockey IQ simply just can't make up from the lack of production from your captain. Hopefully he gets it figured out, whether that's on the first, second, or third line. We'll see where he fits in. Anders Lee is not a bad player. He just needs to find his groove. Next, the bottom 2 defensive pairs. This is a bigger issue than Anders Lee, maybe the biggest issue that this team faces. The decision between starting Sam Bolduc or Sebastian Aho seems to have already been made. This was made in the beginning of the season. Aho outplayed Bolduc considerably in the preseason and in the beginning of the season. He now finds himself with Noah Dobson on the first pair, now that Adam Pelech is out with a hip injury. Outside Aho and Dobson, though, Bolduc, Romanov, and Pulock have looked lost, and they look kind of weak in the defensive zone. Pulock was once a staple of this defense. He now finds himself at -5, 12 games into the season. Bolduc finds himself at -4. A lack of structure and losing men on the rush has led to goals that are simply unsavable for Varlamov and Sorokin. Let's just keep in mind the fact that Bolduc is a Bridgeport call-up who wasn't even supposed to be on this roster. So you know what? I can set him aside. I can say, you know what? We're getting what we expect from him. But Pulock, man, he really needs to step up. And finally, in terms of the doom and gloom of this team, I do want to touch quickly on the forward Pierre Engvall, who was scratched against Boston last night for a turnover against the Wild. Though Lane Lambert is keeping quiet about his reasons for that. We think it's about the turnover against Minnesota. We'll see. Lane Lambert said he had a conversation with him. It seems to be squared away. I think he will return to the lineup on that second line with Nelson and Palmieri soon. But he was looked at as like a real steal from Toronto last season at the deadline. But we're still waiting for him to get going in 2023, 2024. He played well at the end of last year. We'll see where he takes us this year. So, with all of that said, let's take a deep breath. It's true, the Islanders are bad. But you know who's not bad? Noah Dobson. Noah Dobson is not bad. This guy is actually starting out really hot. He leads the team in points as a defenseman with 4 goals and 8 assists. He's tightened up his defensive play, and he's getting walked a lot less. He's getting skated around a lot less, which allows him to flourish with his slap shot when he's allowed to set up in the offensive zone. He's only 23 years old, and he is a point-per-game player, and he looks so confident. You know what, Dobson? Let's roll the clapper reel.
Pajot steals the puck, makes a good cross-ice pass, and Holmstrom's in front, and look where the stick is for Clutterbuck. Perfect position.
What a great look at that. And as a defenseman, my first look was
okay. Let it get back to Noah, and he just sends a howitzer towards the net that beats Fleury. Simple hockey, great result.
Simple hockey.
So I actually talked to him after the Wild game about, you know, being a young defenseman and doing so well, and what it meant to play and score against a legend, a future Hall of Famer in Marc-Andre Fleury, and I thought it was a nice little conversation. Here's what he had to say. What's the hardest thing about scoring on Marc-Andre Fleury?
Yeah, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer goalie. Still doing it at his age. He battles in there. I mean, he made some crazy saves tonight, poke checks. Yeah, tip your cap. He played a really solid game.
Outside of Dobson, the other real star players for the New York Islanders have been Brock Nelson, who looked a lot like the last year Brock Nelson that we saw. You know, he picked up a point against the Bruins, and he has been at the forefront of the identity line time and time again. His ability to mesh with Palmieri has led to probably the most consistent production on this team, and it's just what we come to expect from our second line, the identity line. Brock Nelson, Good job. You get an A. Let's talk about Bo Horvat. On Islanders Twitter, for Islanders fans, Bo Horvat seems to be a two-sided coin. On one side, you have the haters who are saying that he's a bust, saying that Lou Lamoriello made the worst deal of his GMing career. And from last year, it did kind of look like that. This year, however, he's actually getting time to play with Matt Barzal, and you are seeing them starting to mesh. And this is good. You're seeing Barzal being free to skate however he likes because he knows that he has the skill of Bo Horvat behind him. Horvat lets Barzal make his own decisions and is there for him. He's starting to understand how Matt Barzal plays. So, now he's a more dangerous presence on the ice. He's shooting more. Because if you remember in the first game of the season, I think Horvat had something like 9 shots on goal. None of them went in. He started to peter off of that, and now he's starting to come back. It seems like he's getting comfortable on that first line. Bottom line for this team. They have a winning record. The Islanders have a winning record, so I don't want to overreact. But the glaring holes of this team need to be plugged now. Otherwise, 2 of the top goaltenders in the league will continue to be hung out to dry game after game. To put it plainly, if we can find a spot for Anders Lee that works and play a full 60 minutes of hockey, the Islanders can once again return to form. I will see you all on Saturday against the Capitals. For WFEV Sports, I'm Nick Palmer.